Hello and welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. I'm going to be redoing a Stampscapes advertisement from a very long time ago, probably 1993, that ran in Rubber Stamp Madness. It was the first advertising that I ever did, print advertising that I ever did for Stampscapes, and it ran in the pages of Rubber Stamp Madness. It was a single color black and white advertisement, and I thought I would update that in a reflection card format. There were so many things that I wanted to do for this live stream, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to go back in time here. I was thinking about using some of my latest stamps, which I've been doing for a very long time now, but I thought, let's go back in time all the way to the beginning, okay? So it's going to focus around the old mill large stamp, the meadow large, and some mountains in the background, and I used my full moon, but I thought I would add in the glow-in-the-dark version of that moon today, just because that's really updated. You can't say that going back to glow-in-the-dark moons, though. That's like going back, to childhood and playing around with stickers and glow-in-the-dark toys and objects. So, I don't know. I guess in that case, what's old, or what's new is old, or what's old is new. Again, I don't know, whatever. Cyclical type of thing. All right, so that advertisement was a really long one, and I wanted to do a video on that too. I wanted to talk about elongated formats, because I was just doing something with the Nature Set number 5 and showing these elongated formats and how I really like those for that set. I don't know, it just seems to lend itself to that. But I really love the format of things like bookmarks, kind of those exaggerated, elongated forms, either done in portrait or landscape. And I think that would be I've probably done that before, but not too much in the past. So this is going to be 10, let me see, 4 by 10 inches, okay? I don't go all the way to 11 because I don't have anything to mat those cards in when I'm working that size. Now this one's going to be in a reflection card format, so I guess I could have, but I generally cut an inch off the length, just because I don't have anything like 11 by 17 like card stocks to mat my 11-inch cards in. So I just started at some point in time working below the 11 so I can double mat something. Okay, so that is the old mill stamp. Okay. I can still remember talking about where I got my source inspiration from. For my first batch of stamps, I did a lecture at the Carson Rubber Stamp Convention, Carson, California, Rubber Stamp Convention. And I don't know, that old mill was in this photograph in some magazine. The trees and everything like that were different, but I got the perspective and just the weathering on that cabin, or that mill, from that book. And this is like water that's going straight through that mill, so it's not like a cabin next to a river or something like that. It's really more of a mill. Although, if people see a stream running next to a cabin, then that's what it is. Okay, so this is going to be a reflection card. So on my advertisement that I did, this was the scene, okay? But I'm going to put this body of water down this way in this card base with the gold down below. So we'll try to make this a warm toned scene, and we'll try to make the bottom of this area down here as this transition zone into that I don't know, whatever, pond or stream, lake. Hello, Linda. How are you? Hello, Cynthia. I hope you all had a nice week. Happy Friday to you both, or if anyone else is on, hello to you. And thanks for checking out the live stream here. All right, so overlapping my meadow with, or overlapping my mill with the meadow, and then going into another meadow out here. One of the things I did when I inked up this stamp is I blotted off the edges with a dry paper towel. On this, you don't really have to. And if your pad is like super juicy, then the edges right here, these, there's a tonal range right in here. So if you mop off the edge a little bit, they'll blend into that overlapping area. So I've overlapped this by about 1/4 inch with this spot right in there. Okay, now you can kind of see it right there, that line right there. But it's not real prominent. And we're going to be doing so much blending on here anyway that that's not going to matter. Okay, but that's better than having something like really thick down there. So, if you're working with like a super juicy ink pad and you're working with, really a thick style of ink, like a Memories Black or something like that, or just a freshly inked up, VersaFine Clear oil-based pigment ink, then, you just take your paper towel and you just wipe off that edge pretty good. Now, the thicker it is and the wetter it is, you wipe off even more. You even might want to kind of scrub it a little bit so you get that nice drying on the edge. So those transition zones where you overlap are nice and kind of seamless. Hello, Bonnie. How are you? Okay, let's see. Let's get into the background here. Let me see what I did here. I used a series of the tall rock and tall rock with falls here. So I stamped this down. I'm looking at my ad right now. This is back here. It might have been the larger version, but then what I do is this one's going to go in front of this one, and this one is going to go in front of another impression like this, okay? And then I have another one of these over here. So it looks like a valley coming through here, okay? And this is part of the valley. And then I have a moon right up here, and that's how that ad was composed. I'm trying to remember if I remember. I'm trying to think if I remember making this ad, or if it's just kind of a general memory of doing ads for Rubber Stamp Madness back then. Back then, it was always, you were always submitting things in hard copy. This is in the 90s. You weren't uploading an ad, digital ad to like a server or something like that back then. Okay, now this is going to overlap into this right here, okay? Maybe I'll cover up my mill. We don't need to cover up the trees, though, because they're solid. For the most part, they're pretty solid black, okay? So, but this little area down here has been wiped off a little bit so that when we stamp it out, it'll transition into those trees a little bit better. Do you don't want to wipe it all off? Okay, then you have this like white line in between the mountain and those trees. Which, if it happens, again, it's no big deal, but, because we're going to be doing some additional coloring. But if it's not there to begin with, all the better. Okay, so you see that transitions really nicely in that way. We'll go into this tall rock with falls, which is based on Yosemite Falls. I think this is Upper and Lower Falls right here. It's not a direct, copy of that because I think I added some other elements on here, and because I had to kind of dissect it a little bit, and I wanted to fill in more. This one right here is based on El Capitan, but I added this, like, whatever, is it a buttress or I don't know, whatever, call it, geologically speaking, but I didn't want to have that so angled like that because I felt like, we got to give people more money, you know, more value for their buck. So I added on to the mountain like that. Okay. Going like that. And then we'll take some of this right here, and I'm going to add it in right here, okay, and get that to slope down a little bit more, kind of gracefully. Oh yeah, yeah. The new papers. I got those today. So as I mentioned in the video, those papers are they're kind of addictive. Especially when I got in the swing with those. Okay, if people don't know what Cynthia's talking about, they are the designer background papers by Deanna. And they're pre-printed papers like this, okay? So when I got into the swing of it, okay, I mean, I can just use those and no problem, but I felt like because you have this set background, you could be limited to certain types of pre-established whatever settings or characteristics within those papers, okay? And that's what I was thinking about at first when I got those, okay? But then there were certain things that I wanted to do with, you know, a few of them that I couldn't as they existed. So they were like a lot more malleable than I thought. Like this is dark down here, but if I want to lighten it up, I just use white pigment ink down there. You know, if I want to stamp something that I want to stand out against that background, then I can add on to these clouds or something like that with white pigment. Or I didn't need to use those background papers as a whole. Okay, you know, it's a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of, you know, pre-printed paper with a background on it, an established background. But when I started thinking about them in terms of, you know, reflection, horizon cards, even folding one of those papers, background papers, the first ones that I got, in half and making kind of a horizon card out of it. I don't know, that unlocked the, for me, a lot of possibilities with those papers, and it was just like so fun to experiment with. I was seeing it more dimensionally rather than just as a single type of entity, which they're really great for. You know, they're one of the things that is really fantastic about them is that you can do like really quick cards because you already have this really dynamic setting. Okay, so that is your basic. It was like Stampscapes is here. Yeah, in this reverse out text on the bottom. Then I wrote this little descriptive type of thing down below for that piece. But the backpackers were right here. This is backpackers large. I haven't used this stamp in quite a while. But they go right here. Yeah, am I gonna have room for them now? Because I want to do some reeds or something right here now that I think about it. We might not be able to do the backpackers large. But let me see. One of the things I did do to push kind of this idea of perspective is I used the large and the small buck like that. The backpackers were right here, and then I had a moon right up here. So do you see the kind of that pyramidal type of compositional little trick right there? And see, this goes like, you know, kind of roughly to this. You've heard of the rule of thirds right here, so I'd put like a moon right here. So it's everything's kind of going back like that. And then we have these kind of areas descending. Everything kind of funnels back into this area like that. And you can do that a lot of times if you push perspective with the same type of image, but you just do the larger one. You know, in this case, lower in the composition, you do another one smaller. So the viewer's eye will kind of go back in that direction. See, I probably wouldn't use this like right here. I like having them kind of going into the scene that way. Okay. I mean, you know, I mean, if you don't do that, then, you know, it's not going to be like, oh my God, you know, things look like totally off or something like that. But just in general, I have things kind of, you know, with a little bit of space in the direction that they're faced within that format. Okay, I'm wiping off the bottom of this a little bit. Hopefully this design reflects down in this lower area right here in the reflection card format. Okay, don't smash this too much. You don't want to get like too much pressure around those antlers. Okay, like that. And see this right down here? It's just a really nice, gentle tone of that shadow because I wiped some of it off, okay? I didn't wipe off all of it, but then, you know, even in these really small images like that, I give that lesson on cloud usage, how you can wipe off certain areas like that to get a lighter imprint of it. Well, you can do the same thing like on the tiniest of stamps too. Like on a, you know, I don't do it too often because I usually just use white pigment ink, but you know, if you have a wing or something like that on a eagle, I can, you know, dab off a little bit of ink off of one, and it looks like the light is hitting it differently in different areas, which I should probably do sometime. Hello, Mickey. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. Checking out the card. Okay, I think now that I talked about that kind of the visual thing, it seems like I'm kind of missing something here without these micers right here. The perspective is a little bit off. On my other one, I had this like stamped up a little bit higher. This is a little bit squashed in from my original ad. I don't know. I could use a smaller version of these, but let's just go with the larger version here. If anyone's just joined in, this is like a recreation of the very first ad that I ever did for Stampscapes. And back then too, yeah, I remember I didn't stamp it. I stamped it out, but then a lot of it I remember having to hand stipple in. Because back in the day, I think you had to you sent in hard copies of your ad, and I think it had to be in halftone or something like that. That's where they break everything down into just black and white. There's no gray in there, okay? So if you look at it kind of almost microscopically, there's all these little dots, and they're just, the lighter something is in terms of grayscale, the dots are just kind of, there's more space in between them. So it's just like this right here is done tonally. So that's not gray in there. That's just a bunch of dots that are, you know, there's various densities of it in there. So I just hand stippled in, so I wouldn't have to go get a halftone print of a grayscale image. It was crazy back then. And then I don't know, at some point in time, once I got kind of up and running, I went for like color ads. And that's when you just submitted the whole ad. But I think the black and white ones, I think they required a halftone, unless it was just already in grayscale or line art format. Okay, so I want to make this is going to be a warm tone scene in here. And we need to do that water's edge type of thing, which is not in the original ad because I wasn't doing reflection cards then. Could have probably, this mirrored types of card stocks, especially the gold and silver, those are probably out at the time, but I just didn't have the capacity to think about that at the time. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to put some, maybe the moon will be coming out from behind this rock right here. So we need to kind of darken in the sky up here. And I think I just dragged a little fabric of my pad. I think my pad's starting to break down on me. Hello, Jelaya, how are you? Cecile, good to see you. Let me see if I can find my night sky. Yeah. Some night sky here. This might start to look a little bit cluttered here as I do this, as I add all this in. Let's see if I can, then we'll just blend it all together here. Hello, Roadrunner. Thanks for checking out the vid scene. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start moving into more of a warm tone type of format here. So my sky figures, you can stamp them out in black and just color them with a color, but I think I want to go with a color out of my color scheme. So I'm going to make this look kind of warmer, maybe a little bit of, I don't know if it's not really like sepia, but it has that same spirit. So I think I'm going to go with this color brown right here for my sky element. This is right here is there's the Milky Way stamp. This one's Milky Way large. Okay. And let me see if I can just get a bunch of impressions back there of that. Okay. So I'll just try to fill in here. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about going over some of my mountains there, because the whole scene is going to be kind of colored, tinted with that same tone. So a little bit of overlap, it's not going to matter because the whole thing is going to be colored like in those general colors anyways. Now, I just wiped off some of the ink off the perimeter of this stamp. Again, just like, my other imagery that you want to overlap. So see right there, that edge, it's not going to be this hard rectangle edge. I mean, you can see it right there, but it just kind of fades out. That's so that when I overlap it, it blends in with the additional impressions of that same stamp. Let's do this too. Let's add in, we're talking about using this cloud stamp as the general topic. Because I think it's been 2 weeks at this point. Okay, that already had a bunch of blue on it from the last time I used it. It's a good thing I'm so good about cleaning my stamps, huh? That's what happens. I go into some new video or demonstration, and I talk about, okay, I'm going to do this in a certain blue tone, and I'm doing it in this tone because I want it, for whatever reason. And it's like, I stamp it out and it's like black because I didn't clean it off after the last time I used it, which was like, used a bunch of black on it or something. It always works out because you might get all kinds of colors that you would never get, or normally if it's planned out, but You can get some different good combinations. The only problem is a lot of times you can't get them again because it was an accident. Okay, let's go with some little bit of clouds right here, like this. I might be covering up some of these clouds or a lot of this background in here later because of the amount of overlap that'll occur with if I do end up using that moon in there. Golden oldie stamps. Yeah, this is going way back. I thought I would do this one too because for a while I was sending out some of these rock stamps right here as like little bonus stamps. So if anyone received those, maybe they'll get some ideas on usage. I generally use them with each other in combination. They're usually not just this freestanding, rock, like something in the front here and here's this, mountain in the background. I usually use it in conjunction with additional impressions, or maybe the larger sizes. I especially like it for, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I've come to start using it a lot for my like cave scenes. I really love the texturing on them like that. Maybe not this one so much, but the tall rock right here. The other one is tall rock with falls. And I don't know, I guess if it was on a cave system, you don't, the way that you would color it, you wouldn't see that little thin kind of waterfall anyway, but yeah, more of the tall rock. I have a customer that they do stamping with different family members. Mother and daughter are stampers, and I think the mom's sister or something like that stamp. And they were in a class one time, and we were talking about some things that they did. So I said, yeah, well, what are some scenes that you've done following some of the videos? And they actually did this one cave scene that I did. I think it was entitled like Glowworms or something like that, which I thought I wouldn't think anyone would copy. But they copied the glowworms scene, like cave glowworms. And it's because I didn't realize that they both have done some caving before, which I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And I think the son or son-in-law might, do some caving. And I think they're in an area where there's just a lot of cave systems. But I thought that was pretty interesting. All right, so there is our kind of color scheme defined. For me, the way that I do skies, the sky is often set kind of the lighting and color scheme of a scene. I need to get out of that once in a while, but I always tend to do that type of thing. I should do more things like, golden sunset skies coupled with, like blue waters or something like that. My theory is, that, or the way that I think about it, like if there's like water in a scene, it tends to reflect, it becomes like a mirror for the colors that are happening within the sky. So, and then, certain types of light cast on the, on the environment, on the landscape, it generally takes on kind of a tone from those colors. But I do like, when I see people posting like with a sunset colors or something like that, but the water's like blue, I really like that look too, as kind of like a contrast or just like a temperature change type of thing going on. Okay, so let's see. Let's get to adding our tone. Let's take a look and see what this kind of looks like right here, just in terms of our reflection card format. I'll stamp out some other things down in this area to create extra depth in here. But I'm looking at this little transition zone, so I really want this to look like it's on the edge of a, you know, like a body of water. So I think, let me see, let me start adding in, I'll add in a few of these things right now. So I thought about these rocks right here. These are off one of the desert sets, but you can use any kind of rocks right here. I'm going to put some right down here, and we'll kind of add on to this idea of these surrounding rocks right here. Like I said, the perspective's kind of off with those animals right there in relation to these rocks right here. These would be like, you know, enormous pretty big boulders right here. But you know, this is an ad from, you know, the 90s, and perspective wasn't invented that in those years. Okay, let's go like that. All right, there we go with those rocks like that. Let's bring let me see. While I have this, no, I'll just leave the stamp out. I was going to say while I have it out, let's just leave it out because I'm going to be using this with the StazOn ink on that metallic mirrored cardstock. Hello, Jeannie. All right, let's see. So those rocks right there, how they provide that nice kind of transition into that area. You had to break up that long strip of kind of meadow area like that. Now let's do more of like a water's edge type of thing. Or let's hold on that. Let me stamp those out later so that I could stamp them out after I do a bunch of blending in here, so that those impressions of like these reeds and things like that will be nice and crisp right along this edge. If I stamp it out right now and I add in a bunch of tones and do a bunch of blending, it might kind of smear some of it, I'm not sure. Although my black needs a little bit of re-inking too, so we'll do that. I'll do that right now, actually. Let that set up a little bit. So I don't add in too much ink. I keep it kind of more medium most of the time. The only time I kind of charge up my pad with a lot of ink is if I'm doing like a stamp sketch video where I'm going to be cranking out like 10 compositions or something like that and not coloring them in during that live stream. Or if I'm going to like a convention or something like that and I'm going to be demonstrating all day. I try to ink up fully before then, or over ink really. All right, so on this one right here, I don't really have a really super definitive type of light source. No, I'm going to put like, I'll probably put that moon up here. But right now it's these areas within the Milky Way that are a little bit lighter, and then the clouds right there. But right down here, if we look at it, it's not really super defined on areas to keep kind of light. Now I see some cues right here. Okay, so this cabin right here, or this mill, I want to keep that fairly light and visible, okay? The stream right here is an area that I generally do. I keep like roads and streams and things like that generally lighter than the surrounding area. It doesn't have to be white, but just lighter. So we got these two objects right here that are kind of key players in the scene. These two animals right here, I want them to remain fairly light, you know? I don't want to just darken it off so I can't see them unless I didn't like one of them. I wanted to really kind of not eradicate it, but, you know, to make it less kind of apparent. So I'd cut the contrast between something and the background, which means you just make the background lighter, darker. And then we have those hikers right there that will naturally want to keep fairly light. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas of lightness, and the other area around them are going to be a little bit darker, okay? We have some of these lighter areas up in the sky, and I'll generally keep those fairly light. Maybe not this one over here, that looks a little bit repetitive, but see these clouds right there? Those will remain a little bit light too. Okay, so what does that mean? Okay, so the other areas that you can kind of darken in, and I just use some re-inker fluid right here with a light kind of peach color, okay? It's literally peach Bellini is the name of that color. But I'll add this in. Okay, now remember, I've kind of designated some areas right in here to remain light, okay? This is already kind of derived. By the way, this is glossy cardstock that I'm using right here. But see this right here? Isn't that like a really strong visual lead-in? I mean, if you wanted to, you can just kind of tint a card, meaning, you know, you barely color it, you know, just with a very light tone like that. But, you know, I mean, this is a pretty strong kind of light scheme. It's a little bit anemic in here, you know. You probably want to get some color into these areas, okay? But you can see how fast the lighting scheme is established just with the really light colors. So this rooftop here is light, okay? Just to make it seem like the light is coming from above. And then we have a little bit of this illumination in our water. And remember these two elk here. I'll do this right here. So I'm kind of putting a little bit of tone right around there, but I've left an area like right in here a little bit light. So it's like they're in like the spotlight, you know, for you're like a stage lighting director, okay? And you're putting a spotlight on your stars of your stage, okay? That's the way that I'm thinking of the, you know, especially a scene like this, where I don't have like a, you know, like a sun or something like that. And I'm saying, okay, that's going to be my light source right there. So everything is going to be, you know, kind of shaded accordingly. This one's like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's still like 5 different like spotlights on this stage right here. Now sometimes I don't know, I start toning in a scene and I think, okay, I've left that area kind of light, and I decide later on to put something in there just because it looks like it's kind of a spotlit area within a composition. So you're not always working around, you know, some kind of figure or something like that. It varies. All right, so let's see. And this is, you see this right here? When I'm going in here, I mean, there's areas like right around here where there was this white space in between, you know, my mountain and the sky, stuff like that. Areas, you know, with, I don't know, maybe, I guess we could say mist, impression areas. It's like, oh my God, you know, that didn't stamp out right there. You know, by the time you get into, I mean, this is just like really early on in the coloring process. It's like it fills in all this area anyway. So I wouldn't worry about it. Now, if you're missing half the stamp or something like that, then, you know, maybe you compensate with another impression of something, or if you're on a stamp positioner, you can of course stamp it again, or however many times you want, but color and tone fills in a lot of areas. So see right here, this like Milky Way really overlapped into this rock right here hard. You know, so I'll just color the rock accordingly. I'll just make it darker on that side. So you can plan certain things, but you know, a lot of things are unexpected that come along, and you just kind of compensate, you know, for, you know, any unforeseen, maybe not desirable occurrences that take place. In scientific terms, they call it rubber stamping adaptation. You can look it up. And you won't find anything. Okay, so that was that first color. We'll go in with the brown that we've used up here in the sky. Okay. Now, when we start coloring in with this color right here, see, I'm using that same, you know, applicator. So we have a little bit of a mixture of both peach Bellini and this brown right here. So if you just kind of move up a little bit, you know, kind of incrementally in tone, kind of, you see, kind of test it out and see what it's going to look like. You can kind of add it in kind of gingerly or whatever, methodically, and it'll just go on, you know, fairly, you know, slowly. The more you tap off like this, the drier it gets on here, and the lighter the application is with that color. I'll move this into, I'll introduce another color down here, maybe a little bit of greenish tinge or something like that too. Okay, but this is where you can kind of start, you know, kind of altering your application too. Maybe you want kind of more of these slightly darker tones, like in the shadow areas, opposed to like overall. Okay. And here's where you start kind of watching your application in your lighter areas. If you want those lighter areas to kind of stand out, then it's important for you to watch out for your application rate that you're utilizing. Okay, so you know what I mean? So I utilize the drier version of whatever color I'm using. The darker I get, I start using the darker version of it more, and the drier version of it more and more, so that it applies really lightly like that. Okay, and that goes for anything. This is just dye-based inks that I'm kind of applying here, but that goes for alcohol pens, colored pencils, you know, anything like that. Not the colored pencils on the glossy paper, though. That's not going to work. All right, let's take a look here. I don't think I'm done with that brown quite yet, but we'll see what that kind of reflection area kind of looks like right there. The reflection cards, there's not very much contrast in here. Reflection cards tend to work a little bit better when there's not so much, you know, stuff up here, but I think we can still come up with a pretty cool looking, I don't know, whatever area down below, potentially. I'll try to create more contrast right up in here. The more contrast there is, the more of that reflection area down below kind of stands out. All right. Now this brown, I wouldn't say sepia is kind of, you know, not exciting of a tone like sepia prints, but when I start looking at this right here, I often think about like pinks, and I think that just, it makes those brown tones a little bit more rich in areas. Okay, I'll add some greenish tones down here too to try to vary it a little bit more. So this is like a warm pink. I mean, any kind of pink, like a, you know, bubblegum pink or something like that. I found that those really harmonize really well with brown tones. I mean, you've seen that combination. That became like a really popular kind of color scheme, right? It's brown tones plus the like a pink or I don't know, like a sea mist green, that type of thing. So see that right in there? Just kind of twist the color scheme around a little bit. Okay. Then I'll put a little bit of this maybe on the around my clouds. The clouds are, I want to keep those fairly light, like that. They're one of the few things that are still kind of white in the scene. See, it's a little bit richer now up there, just with that little tinge of pink. It's all throughout here, but you see mostly the brown, but it's just a little bit more of a richer brown. I'll put some of this on my mountains maybe, like this. Okay, let's do this too. Let's put a little bit of this tinge in the water like that. Okay, so see some of this water is now reflecting the colors out of our sky. I'm really tempted to put it into the landscape as well in this meadowy area. I'm not sure if I want to do that, if I'm going to go with a little bit of a greenish tinge. But now I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I want that greenish tinge down there. Huh. Thanks, Jeannie. Glad you like the composition. Hello, Laura. Janet, how are you? Hello, Janet in Australia. Good to see you. I was just watching some Australian news last night about I think it was called rock fishing or something like that. A lot of people kind of risking their lives fishing off some rocks, and there's like more deaths than from like rock fishing than any other sport. It's probably because more people do that than like wing gliding or something like that, But a lot of people standing on the rocks, with that might not even know how to swim, And here comes a wave, and washes them out into the water. Not very smart. But as they point out, it's not a lot of and which I was thinking too. I was going to say, it's not going to be a lot of the people that grew up there that are just kind of grew up around the water, because they're really great, water people. They know how to judge things. They've been surfing, their lives and stuff like that. So it's a lot of people that just, I don't know, have moved there, and I don't know, they're just not keenly aware or even water ready. Okay, so this is a little bit of some green right in here. I see a little bit of that brightness in there like that. I'm not really a big fan of the color scheme in here, but that's where I start to. I like to point that out when I'm working on scenes like that, because a lot of people, they get to certain points of their scenes a lot of times. And if it's like this type of process like this, where I'm doing a lot of, like color glazing and things like that, things can get a little bit muddled or very muddled at times, okay? But that's where I go back in. I add in things like, so it's like you're taking stuff, and I'm doing this for the sake of making it richer in terms of tone, but it can look muddled from a textural standpoint. But that's where you go in and you extend out the textural range and lighting and highlights with things like your pens later on, and that kind of balances everything out. But you kind of get there sometimes, at least in this type of process right here, through certain stages that aren't necessarily going to look very resolved, or if they are resolved, they look pretty bad. So You have to get through, and this is like a bad period, or this one right here. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's fairly rich, but it's very muddled in here, okay? Okay, now this is a dark brown. So we're getting a little bit closer to, you know, the black that was used to stamp out our imagery, but I'm just kind of taking it incrementally. And I'll go to black on here too. And it'll cover up a lot of things, but these are transparent colors. So see, this is brown in here, but all those colors underneath are showing through this top layer, lending itself to kind of a richer surface end result look. Now you can do other things too if you're, you know, if you like coloring with markers, you know, you can do that on this paper. You can do, you know, on a semi-gloss or matte cardstock. You can do your blending with colored pencils if you want to. If you want to get multiple tones, you can do all kinds of things. Or people do, you know, speaking of the Deanna Tubbs-Cedillo background papers, you can do. Now she works in all different types of media, but you know, she's done a lot of pan pastel work. You know, which would be on a matte piece of paper, again, not glossy like this. But in terms of your kind of building up of your tones and everything like that, you know, you can do it in a different medium. But potentially, you know, if you layer your media and add different types of color schemes, you can really add to kind of a richer, potentially, end result, you know. Or, you know, it can look like really super muddy. Which happens in mine all the time, because I go overboard, but then I bring it back with those other types of pens, you know, not pens, but media. The other type, you know, I'll add in my white pigment ink, you know, because I went too, you know, crazy with, you know, certain media. You know, it's usually the dye-based inks, but it could be anything. Too much alcohol inks, you know, something like that. All right, now, see, I have this really narrow right here. I'm coming across this line of rocks right back here in the background, like that. Maybe an alcohol pen would be a better, you know, whatever vehicle for that, you know, a little fine-tuned types of applications like that. But see this right here? I'm kind of toning this in right here, but I'm leaving the top of that rock a little bit lighter, just like the sides of this building are darker, but the rooftop is lighter, okay? Here's another rock right here. Let me see if I can get a little bit of tone in there right around here, like that, and so it makes it look like that rock is being illuminated a little bit more by adding a little bit of a darker tone on the side right here. Now see this right here, I don't want to get into that with this. So I'll hit these little rocks in here. I'll put a little bit of shadow on them. But it's better with the, you know, like alcohol markers, you know, or some kind of pen. Doesn't have to be alcohol markers. You can use a, you know, dye-based marker, watercolored pens, stuff like that. But see, now this is kind of, it's looking a little bit more focused to me now, going a little bit darker like this, around in that perimeter like that, hitting my areas in here with a little bit more shade like that. Let me do something right here. See this mountain range right here? I'm going to darken in that side of this mountain a little bit so it makes it look like this one's kind of a little bit more forward from it. So I'm going to push this back, this other one, the tall rock, back optically. This is tall rock with walls. That's tall rock right there, by the way, if anyone didn't see that. So going like that. Okay. With certain types of inks too, this is starting to get pretty saturated out here, and you can see this kind of glow coming through here. With a lot of brands of inks, okay, when that dries, it's going to look a lot flatter looking. It's like, hey, where did my richness go? And what you can do is before your inks dry completely, even after they dry, you can kind of spray seal. But I'm still convinced that if you spray seal before they dry, I think it looks a little bit richer. So it'll kind of retain a little bit more of that look of a freshly inked, toned scene. As far as the dye-based inks go, I'm not talking about alcohol inks. Alcohol ink, I don't think it really matters, when or if you spray seal. Okay. So if you're using both, which I'll do on here, I'd probably spray seal before it completely dries. Just within the half hour or so. It's not like you got to go racing outside or something like that. Okay, there we go, like that. All right, so everything's starting to come out, and everything's kind of a little bit more defined. With our lighting, we've taken it a little bit darker. That. I just got a flashback of going to a comic book convention when I was a kid in the early 80s. Well, not that much of a kid, teenager. I'd go to these not rubber stamp, comic book conventions because I was collecting comics. And some of the bigger shows that took place in Los Angeles, my mom would have to drive me down, but she was visiting her mom and her relatives, my aunts and uncles and my grandmother at the same time. So she just gets an opportunity to, get down there for another reason. But she would drop me off at the convention, the comic book convention. There was this guy that was doing pencil drawings, and he was cleaning up his pencil drawings after he did his inking of his drawings with a kneadable eraser, those erasers that are real stretchy. And I remember thinking, what the heck does he have in his hand there? We thought it was a rag or something like that because I never heard of a kneadable eraser before. So that's a lot of times I don't mention what I'm using here. So if people think it's like an art tool, if they just kind of logged on or I don't know, watch me doing this, thing with a, wadded up paper towel. But sometimes I'm asked, hey, what was that tool you were using, It's like, Bounty. I don't know what the brand name for like paper towels are or whatever they call these in Australia. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit of texture in here with my sedge filler like that. Okay. Yeah, that's better, huh? And I'm wiping off the edge like I do with my cloud stamp. Yeah, just so it's a little bit more kind of subdued. There, see that little bit of texturing in there? It's a little bit darker right there, but it's all right. Okay, now that got darker in there, in this whole area. I think I can go a little bit richer. I feel like I can go a little bit richer with some other tones, colors in there. I think getting that darkness in there, it kind of affords me the ability to go in and add in some other types of tones that might stand out a little bit more, where before I thought it would stand out too much. So It's kind of like bringing certain things up to a certain, I don't know, kind of a resolution. And then I go in and I bring up other aspects of the piece. So things like color changes and intensity, stuff like that. You know, you can jack them up a little bit. There's a little bit of green here. Or more green. That green over that brown right down there looks pretty decent. So I'm using it just a light touch in here. First of all, because I don't know what it's going to look like until I add it in there, but this is a pretty, you know, pale green right here, so I'm kind of adding it in a lot of brown areas just to see what it kind of looks like. First, I get the gist of it. You know, I don't do it in the really light area where it's going to stand out too strongly at first. And then, you know, as I get moving with it, if it's like looking okay or good, then I can add more accordingly, okay? But I'm still trying to retain those lighter areas within that space, yeah, if I can. Sometimes, you know, I go overboard and it's like, oh, that was a little bit too much. So I'll just knock it down with, again, some pigment ink or something like that. All right, yeah, it's kind of coming alive a little bit. Here's like a, I don't know, olive, I guess. Yeah, it's a little bit too warm. This one's like yellow here, right? Yeah, but I'll add some in like that. Boy, that really stands out. A little bit too much. Let's see. Let's find. Let's try this one right here. Here's a brown. Okay, so that's real similar to, well, somewhat similar to this maybe. Maybe it's in between that one and this brown right here that I used. And I'll go in and I'll just kind of knock that down a little bit in the shadow areas. That is really light, huh? It almost seems like it's getting lighter in those areas, but maybe it's because it's brighter. Oh, so like the side of this mill here, you can get some of that in there, like that. Or you can get some texture forms within your rocks like this. They call this kind of scumbling. I'm kind of going like, I'm not doing like filling in areas like fully. I'm kind of just going around like this. Like in some shadow areas, like I'll hit this. There's some little shaded areas within the rock like that. And I'm just kind of giving variation where the whole thing is like one value, but see, I'm going in here like that and bisecting it with a little stroke down like that. And I mean, there's a little bit of, you know, kind of addition in specific areas, but it's more kind of variation. So see this right here? There's this area in here is just more varied. There's oscillations of light and dark within there. And it's like, okay, so this could have been lighter right here and this could have been darker. It's no big deal. Just so long as there's a little bit of variation in here so it's not like the same note being struck, you know, just multiple times across the surface, and that way it just comes out you know, like a little bit richer. I was about to say, if anyone hasn't been to Yosemite, but you've felt inclined in the past, like, that might be kind of cool to check out, I would say go and check it out. Those granite, I don't know, several thousand foot mountains there are really something, or the whatever the just those sheer walls are really something. I said I was going to say that, but I don't know. It's like so crowded these days. I guess if you go in the off season, though, it's probably really easy to get in there. Off season and weekdays, are probably still pretty mellow. So off season to be like, not the summer months. Like fall would be great. Okay, going in and adding in some tone and shading to my forms, like in here. This is just like a gray, like a bluish gray right here. Not specific. I don't know, I just grabbed a medium tone to add in there. Okay, so this looks like this. This is where things are getting rich, but again, they're kind of muddy looking. Okay, so we'll go back and we'll add our adjustments in here, and that should kind of resolve a lot of these areas in here. I pray. Here's some of this blue that I like. Oh, that one's like really bright blue. Maybe that one's like too bright. I like this one right here, but I think this one's like, it's like super dry at this point in time. I need to repurchase one of these blues. I think that I just like smeared that tree right there. I know what I'll do. I'll add some of this in, maybe. I need something in between here, so I'll add some of this in like this, and then I'll try to blend it out using that lighter, drier one. Glossy cardstock, it's not like totally, you can't like absolutely put a mark down back into solution that you just applied. But you can kind of manipulate it a little bit, especially before it dries completely, okay? So this kind of over the top of green, of course, it's not going to read as that blue because you got the colors showing underneath it. But you can get a little bit of that spirit of that tone in there. Let me add a little bit more like this. All right. A little bit muddy, or a lot muddy. Well, that's not too muddy. Maybe I've put the brakes on some of that texturing in there, or layering in there, just because I was mentioning it so much. It's like, okay, let's not make this like overly muddy in here. But let's start adding in kind of a crisp element right back into it. And here's the tiny rock small. Okay, but see this? I'm kind of putting it around my forms in here, my subject matter like that. That seems a little bit more defined like that. Let's put some of this in our water area like that, like right in here. So that gives this area right here a little bit of continuity to over here, and then we'll have it in the reflection area as well. And, okay, let's do this right now. Let's go in. I wanted to use this. Again, this feels like really soaked here. And we'll go in with our black in here. Okay. All right, quite a bit darker right here. I'll do it slowly here because this looks pretty dark. Trying to creep this in, like right in there. See that kind of darkness right there? So it's transitioning like that. There's a movie called Free Solo, if anyone's seen that. It's this guy, Alex Honnold, that does climbs. He doesn't always, but he does a certain type of activity where you go up on different climbs without gear. You know, he'll take a chalk bag or something like that, but he's doing it like largely without ropes. And he climbed up this one El Capitan free soloing. But he practiced it. He practiced the route for, I don't know what it was. It was months and months and months, and he'd done the climb several times with gear. So he had to just kind of refine his certain areas to be able to do it without without ropes. I don't know. That was a few years ago. All right, so there is that. Hello, Tracy. How are you? Mickey's seen it. Yeah, wasn't that something? I think he was on my radar. I forgot what magazine it was. I don't know if it was Outside Magazine when that was, you still were a lot of magazines out there, but I remember him standing on a ledge in Yosemite. I don't know, it might have been on Half Dome though, I think. But I don't know, he holds a lot of records for like speed runs up, a lot of established routes. And a lot of people who do that type of activity, they're just, they don't have the, the skill set or the, they, I don't know. People get summit fever, as they call it. So I don't know. There's certain people that are probably doing stuff that are a little bit more beyond their capabilities without kind of doing dry runs and things like that. And a lot of them are dead, I guess. As you would think, and if they keep, it's one of those things where a lot of those people, they're all about pushing the limits. So the extremes. And it becomes an addiction, growth and kind of that type of thing. And I'm sure the adrenaline of it all gets pretty extreme. All right. So okay, that's coming around a lot more now. These areas right in here are really popping now, like that. So see, the reflection aspect of it, I think, is getting stronger the more kind of contrast that we kind of added into the mix right here. And what we also have here is this warm golden light is now reflecting back up here like that, okay? See, like that, it's kind of like a little bit boring, but this warm light, glowing light like that, you can even see the reflection of this paper up here, so it's kind of like bringing it to life a little bit. Okay, but let's give this a stronger water's edge kind of feel, and we'll do it with these smaller reeds down here like this. Glad you like it, Tracy. Coming around. Oh, Mickey used to rock climb. That is so awesome. In a gym, used to do some gym climbing. Can't do it, arthritis in the hands, yeah. Well, that's one thing, huh? And those rock climbing. You gotta have those hands going. One of the things I was telling my son, I think it was just today, is he was asking me if, because he started getting into forging, metal forging. And then my wife just bought this like hand massage. You put your hand into this mitt and it has like these massaging things in there. But he was asking me about that. And I said, yeah, I'm always like stretching out my hands, my fingers like this all the time, just, to kind of release, kind of like pressure in them. And I just do it, I do it a lot when I just kind of, I don't know, probably subconsciously at this point in time, but like when I'm watching TV or something like that, I'll do a lot of that on the hands. But yeah, something like rock climbing or something like that after a session. I haven't done rock climbing. I've been to like gyms before, but not a lot, In fact, I've never gone to a gym, like a climbing gym, outside of when, like I was one of the Cub Scout den leaders, and we took our den to like a climbing gym. So, some of the parents, fooled around a little bit and got on the wall, which was fine with that gym, But that was the only type of like harness climbing I've ever done. We used to go out to Joshua Tree all the time though, but it wasn't in harness. It was scrambling or class 3 type of climbing. Hands and feet. Okay, that's looking pretty good. That looks really busy down there though with all those reeds. Okay, so what we're gonna do, which I thought it would, see I was kind of like trying to condense some of this a lot where it's like really busy, but then if you add enough of it, it just becomes like one big clump, okay? But I think instead of just doing that more and more and more, what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to darken this area right down here a little bit more, and you can do it with black, but I think it'll be better if I just do it with like a green, like a color out of that color scheme down there, okay? And I won't do it like too extreme, but we'll just cut down that contrast a little bit. Now that black is going to, everything will get a little bit darker too when I spray seal it. It's a little bit richer looking. So the background will get a little bit darker to match this really freshly stamped black right there, okay? That's cool, Mickey, though. Let's see, 30 years ago. So that was like when rock climbing gyms were just kind of coming onto the scene, right? Like probably in like larger cities or something like that too. I was just talking about rock climbing with my son. We were talking about rock climbing as kind of a sport that's kind of here to stay now. It's like an officially, it's been like a Olympic sport, I think, right? It's not an exhibition sport. It's an actual sport, I think now, per event. But it's because, there's like different gyms going up in our area, like brand new ones. And we were talking about the ones that are already around, but these newer ones are, like really, really nice, huge looking from the outside too. I've only seen like photographs of the inside, but I looked at it fairly recently because one of my friends that lives out of state, they were coming into state here, and I don't know. I was just talking about, well, his daughter who competes in rock climbing, gym climbing, if they wanted to go on their, some of their off time, and, to one of the local gyms, and that's when I started kind of looking around too, at all the different gyms in our area. Okay, I'm looking at this now and seeing if there's anything else that I'm missing up top there. Like I said, I'm not sure. If I might put that moon up there. I'm not sure. But let's start adding in some other elements down here, okay, into this water. And I think one of the things that I'll start doing is adding in some of these rocks like this. And we'll add in some of these smaller ones right in here, kind of more distant. And then I have a larger version of it right here, okay? And I'll add some of those right down here in the foreground, like this. And we'll try to push depth in the scene. And I think he died. Who died? Now, I know Alex Honnold didn't die. Unless he did like today or something like that and I didn't see it. Now Alex, he's still alive and well. He climbs all that. He lives out in like I said, in that documentary with his wife out in Las Vegas, but he goes and climbs like in the Red Rock State Park. Red Rock, is that what it's called? Those mountains right outside of you can see actually from Las Vegas Strip, but I saw him on this other website, or I mean a Facebook channel. Magnus, who's this guy that does these climbing videos. I don't know, he does all kinds of different videos, but he's, you know, he started off as like a climber. Okay, so on the mirrored cardstock stays on, okay? Not, don't use like a, you know, like a VersaFine Clear or something like that, unless you're going to emboss your images on here. But you want a type of ink that's going to transfer and dry on this type of surface right here. Good impression pressure. I always kind of have to kind of relearn this right here about how long to keep, you know, pressure on it. If I stay too long, sometimes it dries so fast that I lift it up and it's like a lot of the ink didn't transfer on here because it dried on the rubber as well as the surface, but it comes off in the rubber. And I don't know, sometimes you go too short of a time. I mean, it's not like there's like a 1 second window or something like that. But see these rocks right here? And I'll put some other right here and maybe another one right in, maybe down here somewhere. I don't want to block off my reflections of those animals like that, because they're like a, you know, like main subject matter or key subject matter. There's been a lot of those rock climbers that died, though. There's been one of the craziest ones was this Netflix documentary. Now I don't know if they had the contract and if it's Netflix that funded this documentary, but they were doing this documentary on this one guy that was like one of the preeminent climbers, really pushing the envelope. Again, you know, with all those, that's why it always happens. But and he died like during the like the filming of it, not on camera, but he went somewhere during the months that after they had already started that documentary. And I don't know if he fell or if it was an avalanche. I can't remember. But that one was called The Mountaineer. I thought, oh my gosh. Crazy stuff. So it's you know, it's been proven though that stamping those locations is safer than climbing them. Did I say hello to Caroline? Hello, Caroline. If I didn't, on hand finger massager sounds one. Yeah, yeah, that it was pretty cool. I don't know if anyone has these. We have this like foot massager thing, and okay, this is where I've added in these rocks like that. Okay, I'm going to add one more right over here. But it has this. I don't know what it has. It has this like bag in there that's filling up with air, so it's like compression. It might be like a vibrating thing too. I'm not sure. That hand thing, I just used it like briefly today just to check it out. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. Oh, and it has a heating element in it. I don't know. Maybe if you guys are all stampers, you know, and you know, after you get done with a, you know, if it's a long period of stamping, you know, you're working on a bunch of cards or something like that, it might not be a bad idea to decompress, you know, with a, you throw your hand and oh, I don't know what, maybe both hands, I don't know what hands gets, you know, more worked, your main hand or your off hand. But, you know, as you're sitting watching TV or something, well, whatever, watching YouTube videos, you can put your hand in a massager. It'd be kind of good, probably. And I joke a lot, but yeah, about the hand and hand care, and I always talk about the ergonomics of stamping too. So whenever, you know, you have large stamps, stand up to get leverage, and like, you know, if you're doing a lot of repetitive types of things like ink applications, that's why I always kind of angle my pieces in the direction that's going to be the most conducive for the most natural mark, especially if it's a repeated type of thing where I'm going like this. This is not, you know, like an ergonomic angle for me on a lot of times. So when I'm doing these types of things like this, I'll angle my pieces, you know, where it's the most, I'm right-handed, so it's where it's the most comfortable for my right hand. So I'm real conscious of that. And if you haven't been doing that, if you kind of think about it, make a conscious effort to think about it, but eventually it just becomes more like, you know, like a subconscious or unconscious type of thing. You'll just kind of naturally do it because what happens is you build up like muscle memory. It's not necessarily great for these demonstration purposes. You know, when I'm flipping my card upside down, you can't really, you know, sometimes you can't see it being developed, you know, right side up for a lot, you know, a lot of the times, but I'm doing it for kind of ergonomics. Okay, now what I'm doing here is, see all these little rocks right here, these little rock textures? I'm building that around these areas to kind of, it sets the objects into their setting a little bit more, I feel. You know, because I'm not going to be doing like shading in here. I don't think I could even do that if I wanted to with StazOn. Maybe if I'm really fast and, you know, I dip it in there and you kind of put a little streak and shadow down there or something like that. But you know, StazOn dries so fast, so I don't know if I could do that at all. I think maybe if I dab, you know, like a cotton ball or something into this, and by the time I get over here, it's probably, I would imagine it's like 50% of it is already kind of dry, or you've lost 50% of the, you know, the potential ink that you wanted to apply. I don't know. I don't try to blend like super fast drying inks like that. It seems like it would be a, I don't know, frustrating effort. All right, so right down here, I put, see those textures right here, here, and here. Okay, but I didn't do it all the way across because, you know, you want a little bit of variation. So it's some, none, some, none, some. Just like I'm always doing with things like lighting, you know, it's like light, dark, like that. Can you see these like rocks right in here? Like that? It gives it a little bit more kind of perspective and distance in here. Thanks, Bonnie. What you got to do is, while you guys are stamping, get that foot massager and have that foot massager going while you're stamping, you know, with your hands. Then when you get done with stamping and you're kicking back, then you get the hand massager. But do things like this too, you know. It's like like hydrate, you know. Make sure you're drinking enough liquids and stuff like that for the joints and everything like that. Which is something that I have to consciously remember to do sometimes, especially in the colder months. It's like I mostly drink like cold, like, you know, beverages. I don't drink like coffee too much. A little bit, you know. I don't know, not so much of a tea drinker. I seem to be more sensitive to like caffeine these days, but I drink, you know, like decaf coffee. But I'd really want, I don't know, I guess I can get decaf tea too, but I don't know. But I find that if I don't drink enough, it's like, you know what, I've been sitting around. The last thing I had, you know, it's like nighttime. I think I had like 1 cup of something to drink like all day. But I can kind of feel it though. And sometimes I don't kind of relate it to hydration until I remember, you know. But it's like, oh, that's what it was, you know. So you get a lot of good blood circulation and all that type of stuff, you know, with oxygen to your whatever extremities. All right, so let's see what this looks like here. We got these, you know, different reeds right up here. And it's our little pond like that. Okay. I think it looks like I'm decent there at this point in time. But let's add in those sharper types of things in there. Marc-Andre Leclerc, yeah, that's it right there. Yeah, the Mountaineer. Was it, did he die in was it in Patagonia in that thing? I know the one guy that did the free solo did perish. Well, it wasn't Alex though in free solo. It was someone. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of yeah, free solo artists climbing climbers. Definitely didn't come off of some of those climbs alive. A lot of those mountaineering types of things, though. I don't know how many people have died from like a free solo type of climbing, but it seems like all those kind of mountaineers, it seems like the large majority of them, if we were talking about like deaths, it seemed like from avalanche, you know, a lot. But yeah, Leclerc, yeah. That was a crazy documentary. I went into it not knowing anything about that documentary. I just like those kind of outdoor types of docs like that. And yeah, I thought, oh my gosh. I think there was like a rush to do a lot of those types of documentaries after the success of Free Solo. Oh, KC, huh? That's where you're climbing. That's cool. That's a really great exercise. Oh yeah, Avalanche. Yeah, that's like what was his name? God, that was another doc on I can't remember his name. Who was that preeminent climber, just mountaineer guy? Lowell. he died in an avalanche. Okay, adding in highlights with my paint pens like this. I'll try to get as close as I can here. But this is going to give our piece a little bit of shimmer. And in this meadow here, this meadow is really ripe for, I'm going to add in some like little floral types of touches in here. Anything to give ourselves like an excuse for, kind of some different textures and colors into areas, you know, to make it kind of like sparkly. And like in a meadow type of situation, I often add in things like wildflowers, you know, of whatever color in here. I don't know, I'd probably do white or something like that. I think they call it pearly everlasting. Those are some of those white flowers in certain areas. But in here, we have this pinkish tone in here, some pink colors. Now this green right here, I don't know, I want it to look like it's just kind of like those green tones in there are being highlighted a little bit. I know you can't see this really well, you know, with this. This is like green, a certain type of green over something that's already kind of that same value. But I start doing that, then I'll get to like the white or something like that, or this beige tone like this, and we'll add some of those into this area. So in this sky area up here, I wanted to add in all those other tones, but we've lost a lot of the starry types of texturing in here, but that's where you kind of go back in and add it with this. And it's different than, you can say, well, if you're going to add it back into the white, then why did you just color it in the first place? Well, it's to get all those other different rich tones in there, additional browns, blacks, pinks, and all that in there. And you can kind of see those stars still in there, but they've just been covered up, so it's almost like you're kind of reintroducing maybe a closer star or younger star or whatever. So you're giving these stars, or the starry area, some depth, you know, by having some crisp elements of it with some more, you know, softer, darker ones, okay? So it's not like I'm just trying to go back in and add in, reintroduce the stars that kind of disappear that I could still see there and just kind of bringing them back out again. No, it's like another whole layer of sharp, close against dark, far type of thing. Okay, now this area up here too is those pinkish brown tones, so let's go in and add in those same colors, maybe? Here we go. There's like a pink right here. Oh, here. This is perfect too. If I add some of these up here in the sky, adding some of these down here in the sky would be stars. Down here, they would be flowers. So you get this little bit of a, whatever, textural continuity between the two spaces. Linda's getting x-rays on her stamping hand. Oh my gosh. I think you've mentioned that before now, Linda. What is going on there? Yeah, I don't know. Everyone, while you're watching this, if you're not doing anything, stretch out your hands right now, you know. Get a little, I do it in both hands, but, you know, just around the joints and everything like that. But yeah, that's not good there, Linda. Linda, do you stretch out your hands before, during, and after when you're stamping? Now see, Linda does some big pieces too sometimes. And like I joke about it at times too, but you know, like when I'm doing something, you know, in a, you know, the Stampscapes lab, trying to figure something out, and you know, coming up with a little type of, I don't know, whatever composition or technique. I joke about it sometimes. I say, well, Linda's going to have like 5 of these, like, you know, on the Facebook page, tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like he's really going to investigate that, whatever, we came up with, in the live stream. But yeah, that's a lot of you know work with the hands like that. So yeah, but getting that circulation and everything like that, and then limbering up, and also it's the biggest thing is the ergonomics of it. Keeping within your range of effectiveness. Just to minimize the strain, potential strain on certain joints and hands, or even like shoulders. Like if I'm doing like a repeated type of motion like that in a piece with my hand, sometimes it's like if I'm not thinking about it, and again, I don't think about it too much anymore because I'm pretty conscious of it, or just it's in my subconscious and I'm not thinking about it, but I feel it like up in my shoulder somewhere sometimes if I'm doing some sort of movement, repetitive type of movement. Which it might not be a big deal, okay, if you do it, you're doing it like once or whatever. But if it's a repeated thing over the course of you're working the same way or something like that, and if you do that, whatever, 10,000 times, 20,000 times, if you're a card maker and stamper, if there's some certain types of techniques like that you're employing, it kind of adds up. So when we used to go to Joshua Tree, like even stepping, how to step down, off of rocks, I always taught my son that and his friends when we were out there. And I'd say, hey, it's not a big deal, if your knees straight and you're stepping down off rocks. I said, it's not a big deal if you do that like 20 times or something like that. But over the course of like several hours when we're out in the rocks, jumping around on rocks and, we're not jumping too much, but just stepping, we might be taking like 2,000 steps, or something like that of that same movement. So I always teach them to kind of don't lock your knees. Always kind of have them bent so that you're not absorbing that impact right into the knee. Okay, now we're going with the white right here, and this should really stand out, or it'll stand out the most in terms of contrast. It's going to be like too much, but that's where my white pigment ink comes into play. I'm going to use some of this on tops of some of my rocks right here, just a little bit of a top highlight like that. So these rocks are a little bit more, they're a little bit more rounded like that. See these rocks right in here? They're kind of in a darker area. There's not like light on these rocks right here like that are down here. But if I just put a little bit of this kind of highlight on them like that, and it might be too much, but I'll put some more on these other ones right here so that those ones in the distance kind of make sense. Makes sense from a lighting perspective. If you have like highlights on rocks in the dark area, none in the more illuminated area, it would seem kind of weird. See these little areas down here, these little flowers or whatever. Could be highlights too. It just kind of brings, it kind of wakes up the landscape, or wakes up those areas certainly, with a little bit of sparkly contrast. Everything's kind of vibrating too much though, with all these little dots in here. There's like too much across there. But then again, that's where that white pigment ink, kind of the last step it's usually the last thing that I do on pieces comes into play. Okay, so I'm going to put that waterfall a little bit lighter like that. I don't think I'm going to put too many little highlights on these rocks right here because everything's kind of vibrating in here with all these little sparkles like this. So, let's see here. There's these tree trunks like that. Okay, see these tree trunks right here. They're all kind of pointed up. That. Okay, I think that is okay. If anyone's just joined in, I was mentioning this is like kind of a replica or an updated version of my first advertisement for Stampscapes. And it was an ad that ran in the pages of Rubber Stamp Madness in 1993. I think. I don't think it was 94. Okay, so 1993, that would have made me, I was 7 at the time. All right. Let's see here. Let's mellow some of this out. I was just joking on that one, by the way, with the age. But the year is about, I think it was 93 that I did that ad. I think it was like, when was it? It's like summer of 93, probably. I think. I don't know. Maybe it was earlier. Can't remember. I wanted that first ad to, have a decent impact, so I went half page, I think it was. I don't know if it was a half page. I think that was roughly what it was, though. All right, white pigment ink, like that. Anyways, yeah, Linda, I hope that that stamping hand there goes well. I hope they find something that you can do there that gives you some relief on that, though. Oh, Teasdale. I love tea and coffee. It was just like I said, I don't know, at some point in time, if I don't have, because I don't drink it too much, I think that was probably a big part of it. All it takes is like if I go like a couple days, I mean, I love the flavor, but then it's that day that I don't have it. I get those big, massive kind of like headache, kind of like withdrawals or what, from not having it. But I love it, like cappuccinos and even like instant coffees and stuff like that. I was in the store the other day and there was this big bag of this like Vietnamese coffee. I love those Vietnamese coffees with this little drip thing. And they always have like the milk part of it. They call it Cafe Suada. I'm totally butchering the pronunciation, but it means iced coffee milk. But the milk they used in it was, or is, condensed milk, so it's sweet to really offset the really strong French roast. And yeah, I tell people that was like nectar of the gods. Can't have it anymore though, because the lactose and the caffeine. We can dream. I can dream about it though. Still, Okay, so adding this little texturing down in here in these kind of more illuminated areas. I added it around these clouds right here. See that kind of illumination right there? It's real soft, and I'm building it up. I think I want to add that in there quite a bit like that. I almost forgot about that moon, if I'm going to add that moon in there still. Okay, so this is an illuminated area right in here. That'll be the perfect area then for a little bit of light against dark. That's like a big blob of it. See, this like just erases and it comes right off if you add too much. This is just a really soft application of it, a very light application. Okay, so I'm doing it with my Brilliance ink, which is a water-based ink that if you make an impression with this ink on here, it'll dry. That's what it was designed for. But the way that I'm applying this though, like an oil-based pigment ink has a reputation of not being able to be used on glossy cardstock. Now, if you're just doing it for these little foggy types of effects, it's just a real thin application of it that any type of pigment ink will dry on your cardstock like that. I say any ones that I have ever tried dry just fine because I wasn't using the Brilliance ink for a long time for these little foggy touches like that. I was using an oil-based one, the Hero Arts, the Clear Snap, Color Box, oil-based white pigment ink. Okay. All right, so ending that down like that. So see, this kind of, it offsets things a little bit. Or it doesn't offset, but it balances out these little crisp little reflective types of glowing areas on here. So see, it doesn't look so like, it's not like crawling with like little dots down there. Now up here, that's, all those textures up there really similar. Okay, here, let me do this right here too. See these trees right here? Let's just do this right here. I'll show you. I'm coming down right in these trees right here. So it goes sharp, kind of soft, sharp like that. That's a little bit too much, but that pigment ink is going to dry a little bit more see-through, and that won't be quite as, it'll be like that right there. So see, this kind of creates a little bit of a push-pull right in here. Okay, there's a lot of glare on here right now. Here, let's do this right here too. I tend to like this around my openings like this, like with the covered bridge. Like that. I like that kind of mist right in there. It just seems like it makes sense. Like this, if this water is coming out of this mill, here's this mist right there. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a, that, I don't know, different vibe in there. All right, I think that is it right there for the lower portion at least. Okay, remember it's going to dry a lot more see-through, and then when I spray seal this, that white is going to get more see-through at that point in time too. Okay. So Linda, have you done like you know, like Advil types of things, to decrease like swelling or inflammation like that? Speaking of my hikes and stuff like that, someone told me on hikes and things like that when we used to go out, a couple of my friends used to take Advil after, because they'd get, you'd spend like sometimes be out in the rocks like for 8 hours or something like that, covering like quite a few miles and a lot of climbing and down climbing too. Even though we're pretty careful about foot placement and ergonomics and all that type of thing, but one time, I think I got back and I was sitting on a chair or something like that, and then I couldn't straighten out my knee. It's like locked, So I thought, oh, I think I don't do that too much. I don't take anything, but I did try it at one time going out and taking an Advil after the activity, and it's like, oh, that really did, work. In terms of, soreness, especially. I think that was the only time my knee kind of locked on me, but that did help. So I'd imagine, I don't know, in theory, it seems like that could be potentially something that would be kind of good. So see this right up here? So you see how crawling that is with all those little dots? But if you put like this, like one, it could even be like one, in there. So let me put this right here. So see this right here? It's a lot of repetition of form or texture, okay? But if you just kind of change one of them like that, that area in there looks different to me because we have this one star in there that's like the dominant focal point in there. So all these other dots around it, they become, you know, I don't know, whatever, visually, I don't know if the word is like subservient or something like that. You know what I mean? Because this one looks just so much, I guess in this case, brighter than others. But it's also like a textural change in there. So there's a lot of contrast in there. All right. And I'm gonna put a couple like down here too, I think. Yeah, it's just little I don't know, little textural little types of things like that. You know, might be kind of interesting. Let's do it. Let me see if I can even see it in here. I don't know if that's okay, going to be dark enough, but here, I'll put one in that rock right there. Go like this. We'll put a few of these little things like that right in there. I mean, I've mentioned this a lot in my other videos. We'll add in like things like fireflies into the whatever the scenario, you know, just to bring a little bit of a different textural element in there. Maybe this will be good too, because maybe they'll reflect down in that lower area, you know, the reflection area. Okay, so see this like that. And again, it's a little bit of continuity from top to bottom, you know, like that. It represents something different down here, but it's the same form. Now, I wouldn't put these, you know, I wouldn't put those like that anymore. But I'm just, you know, I was matching the, kind of doing that version of my ad from way back when. Okay, a little bit more mist right in here. And let's see here. Oh, by the way, so here's like some moons right here. I might have to do a different, if I do put one of these in, I might have to do a different version of it. Like this one's real greenish tinged, although it'd match the greens down here, but, you know, I put it like right up in here somewhere. Now, I mean, that looks too extreme. I would tone it a little bit with the pigment ink, but, yeah, something like that could work, I guess. Like that right in there. That would get rid of the repetition of that star and that one being kind of really similar too. I mean, I could tone over one of them too, but yeah, I would color this one differently right here. Instead of that greenish tinge, I would probably give it a tone that's similar to this sky right in here. I might add that in later, not on this live stream right here. But let's take a look here and see what this looks like, our little reflection card. So we have this right here. This is what it would kind of, someone's experience opening it up might look like, you know, like that. It's a little bit busy. Yeah, maybe it could use that, you know, stronger kind of focal point up here. And again, it would be something that's a little bit, becomes a little bit more interactive too. This in itself, reflection cards I find with those reflections like that, I do think that those are fairly interactive because people open it up and they do this type of thing with it, okay? But then, you know, if you have like a moon up here or something like that, I don't know if, you know, we give that to someone and they go running into the bathroom unless they're kids, but, you know, they probably would check it out. You know, if you gave a card to someone with some glow-in-the-dark elements in there. But, you know, oftentimes when you give a card to someone, you know, they usually have it on display for a little bit of time at least. But, it's just kind of cool when the lights go out. There's, that extra little element up there like that. But, anyways, yeah, it's a pretty fun little, whatever, Stampscapes add number one, 2.0 or something like that in this reflection card format. I like it a little bit more of a three-dimensional, type of aspect to it. Again, interactive a little bit more. This will get, we'll put a coating of spray sealant over it. And because I always show this right here, but this is the alcohol ink edition right up there. See that right there? You can see where I've added that alcohol up there. It doesn't match from a tonal aspect because it's got that alcohol filmy look to it. But when you spray seal this, all of this becomes unified in here. You won't see that change in there, that undesirable textural change in there from the alcohol inks, okay? So and these will become a little bit richer in terms of the tones. The white gets a little bit more see-through, so it's not as light. Sometimes you have to, if you want it light, you have to go back in and put another layer of it on there, and then you just lightly spray seal that. So you can put on multiple coats if you need to. So don't spray seal like little foggy little elements too thickly with your spray sealant with one spray. You just kind of give it a light spray. I spray it from like 12 inches and I might hit it like, like 3 times or a couple times just so it's lightly sprayed. And then that dries for about 5 to 10 seconds. Then I'll hit it again the same way. So that there's a kind of a sealant across all of it. And then I might hit kind of my darker areas with a little bit of a thicker spray. So I kind of go around on the perimeter because my white kind of applications of, mist or something like fog clouds are often kind of towards the middle of the scene or on the interior. I don't usually put it on the exterior because the exteriors I usually make a little bit darker, just to kind of frame everything in there. Let's see. Mickey watches too many documentaries. Can't keep them straight. Yeah, especially when they're all the same kind of or there's ones under the similar theme. They can get mixed up in my mind too. Oh, you live through those documentaries, huh? You can feel it, if you've done that rock climbing before, them kind of going over. You understand all that, the types of whatever situational things like that so much more too. You just stretch but not before arthritis maybe. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, try to stretch, a little bit before, during, and after. And especially, I don't know if it's worse after you get done stamping, but if it is, I don't know, maybe try to, let's see, try to take some anti-inflammatories or something like that. There's like different foods too that I've been reading up on too that are good for that type of thing. I tried not drinking coffee and went through 2-week withdrawal period. Yeah, I can definitely see that, because if I just start drinking, a lot of caffeine, and I've thought this is going back like 20 years. 25 years. And I wouldn't think about it though, so I wouldn't put the two things together. But it's like, like sharp shooting pains. If I don't have caffeine after drinking it for just even like a couple days now. Or like when we were traveling too, if I was driving some places, sometimes I'd grab like a caffeinated drink. So I would have gone through like, whatever, like 3 or 4 days of drinking more caffeine than I normally would, if I'm doing long stretches of driving. And then it's like, after I got back home, it's like the next day or I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? I like barely like walk up the stairs without, feeling like so tired. Or I'd get like I'd crash in the afternoons, in terms of energy or something like that. It's like, oh, I've been drinking that caffeine, for the past 2 days and I didn't have it today or something like that. So, yeah. Oh, Tylenol and ice. Yeah, okay. Huh. Well, even if anyone doesn't have any kind of hand things like that, what I do is I'm always going like this. I go like this, and I stretch it out this way, like this. I'm pulling like this. And then there's this kind of martial arts called Aikido, where they're doing these different exercises. I'm sure it's all on YouTube, but then you take your arms and you kind of pull them down like this, so you're stretching out this way, and then you're going like this way too, where you can really feel it all the way up here. And then for me, I'm always going like this. I'm stretching it out this way, and then stretching it out like this. And then I usually get my hand, and oftentimes I'm like massaging this area right in the interior like this, or like right in here afterwards like that, you know. So I'm constantly doing this type of thing, and then stretching it out like right here where I could feel it across my knuckles like that, like before and after stamping. Or it's like, after I do anything, if I'm grabbing something a lot, or if I'm driving, for a long period of time, where you're like this, I think it's a good idea to just kind of stretch it out afterwards. Like driving's a big thing, If you're driving a lot, it's like keeping it conscious. It's like, more traffic or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm grabbing this, for a lot more of the period of time, while I'm driving. Rush hour traffic. So yeah, stretch it out after that too. All right, but anyways, there is my, well, I don't know, it's a little bit of a, kind of a real busy looking reflection card here. I think what I might add in that moon right up here for a little bit of a stronger focal point. And I think I might put in some sort of like word or quote stamp right here in this corner, like that. Okay, this is getting a lot of glare here, but like that. See that warm tone light on there? This is also providing a warm colored light like that. See how it looks like different like that? It looks a little bit, when I don't see that warm light on there, after putting these down like that, it looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit anemic to me without this part, reflecting this warm light back up in there, still a little bit like that. Huh, that really does kind of wake it up a little bit. Now, after seeing that, if I was going to do anything on this, I think I would add a little bit more of a warmer tone in there if this was going to be my scene after seeing this. But, it's like this, this little area down here just kind of automatically gives it a little bit more vibrancy and life, I think, like that. Not to mention, the three-dimensional aspect of it too. So, yeah. Maybe I should put a couple of those little fish down here too. I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll post the the end result on the Facebook group. So, yeah, I'll give it a try here. Let's see. It seems usually I have to adjust the whites after spraying. Yeah. I do that sometimes, but I think I compensate for that ahead of time, knowing that I'm going to be losing some of those whites in there, candy, yeah. So I just kind of overdo it a little bit with the white, knowing that it's going to be, that I'm going to lose it with the spraying. I'm losing less with the spray fixative, though, which I didn't use for years and years and years. I was usually using the Krylon Crystal Clear or the Krylon UV resistant clear gloss, okay? But then I started using that, the spray, forgive me for repeating this a gazillion times, but the spray fixative seems like it's less kind of I like the glossy a lot of times with certain types of things. Like this up here would be really cool in terms of the vibrancy of the colors with, like a thick gloss on there. It just looks really nice, okay? But I lose some of those things, like those subtle touches with the white the white foggy pigment ink looks with the thicker sprays, okay? But the spray fixative, it has really good coverage, but it's also really, I don't know what it is. It's probably like 1/3 of the thickness and probably drying time of the thicker types of acrylic sprays. So it's just, it seems to be a good solution for just about everything, especially if I was just going to get one can. Now I have the UV and I have the triple thick, but, and I like those for different things. But the spray fixative is my go-to all around acrylic spray these days for multiple reasons. Now, if I'm spraying like the clayboard art tiles or something like that, where I want that end result, those tiles, those clayboard pieces to look really glazed, like a fired ceramic tile or something like that. I like the thicker sprays for that, like the triple thick or the even or multiple coats with the UV, or it could be anything, urethane sprays or something like that. You can use those furniture sprays too. They might not be archival, but so it yellows a little bit in 20 years. I don't really care. Oh, Idaho. Yeah. I never got out into those areas. I've only been to Idaho once, but I wish I had, set aside a couple days to check out some other areas of Idaho while I was there. My friend lives out there. I should go. I don't know. He's lived out there for like 20 years or something like that. I should have visited him at some point in time. Yeah, it's back to the basics here, Mickey. With these early designs right here. So all of these designs right here were like some of my first ones that I ever drew. I think this one here is like 082E as in Edward. So these are the first, I don't know, all of these designs in here are my first batch of Stampscapes, which I think went up to 90. What is 90? Yeah, 91. I think 91. It wasn't 100 designs. It was like 90 something designs in my first full batch that I came out with a catalog for. So yeah, it's pretty fun just kind of playing around with some of those real early designs, just, independently from the rest of them once in a while. Although I might be adding my other moon in here, but that's, not a big thing. All right. Thanks for checking out the card, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of evening. And yeah, sometime we'll have to do another one of those live flip through live streams of an old Rubber Stamp Madness or one of those other magazines sometime. That was pretty fun. We did that last, I think it was Saturday or Sunday or something like that. So got a lot of people, talking about the stamping in the old days and stuff like that, and a lot of old companies, and I don't know what's happening with whatever companies these days, and getting the latest kind of updates with all of that type of stuff in media. It was pretty fun. So anyway, yeah. All right. Have a great rest of evening, everyone. Thanks again.